The Ibrahim Index of African Governance, or IIAG, is an annually published composite index that provides a statistical measure of governance performance in African countries. It is the most comprehensive collection of quantitative data on governance in Africa. So, what is governance? We define governance as the provision of public goods and services that a citizen has the right to expect from his or her state and that a state has the responsibility to deliver to its citizens. And how do we measure governance? We believe that assessing outputs and outcomes of policy, not measuring legislation, is the most useful way to measure governance in Africa. Our definition of governance is reflected in the structure of the IIAG in 4 distinct categories: safety and rule of law, participation and human rights, sustainable economic opportunity, and human development. These categories are divided into 14 subcategories. Under safety and rule of law are rule of law, accountability, personal safety, and national security. Under participation and human rights are participation, rights, and gender. Under sustainable economic opportunity are public management, business environment, infrastructure, and rural sector. Under human development are welfare, education, and health. All these subcategories are comprised of over 90 indicators, ranging from judicial independence, to gender equality, to digital connectivity, and access to water. The IIAG provides data for 52 African countries from the year 2000 to the most recent year. Each country receives a score on a scale of 0 to 100, with the best performing countries scoring higher. Countries are also ranked from 1 to 52 in each year. The IIAG stands out over other governance indices because of its diversity. It combines data which covers the whole spectrum of governance in Africa. Every part of the IIAG is comparable across all 52 African countries since the year 2000. The process of calculating the IIAG is fully transparent. The value of the IIAG is its use as a tool for a wide variety of stakeholders. It provides African citizens with a tool with which to hold their governments accountable. It provides governments with a tool with which to govern. It provides the private sector with a tool to assess the climate for doing business. It provides policymakers with a tool to aid decision-making and track progress, and provides academia with a tool to assist research.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the Foundation, welcome to the launch of the 2014 Ibrahim Index of African Governance. Before we kickstart, I'd just like to get some of the boring stuff out of the way. I would like you to please keep your phones on, but on mute. If you don't know, please do check with your neighbor. For translation services, English is on 1, French on 2, and for neutral, 0. In a moment, I will introduce Dr. Ibrahim, who will take you through the key findings of this year's index. I will then take questions from the press. We also have about 350 people joining us through our live web stream. For those of you who are on Twitter, please do tweet #IIAG. I will now hand over to Dr. Ibrahim.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our annual press conference. And this morning we're going to talk about the findings of the index. We have a slight variation to our press conference this year because we are separating now the announcement on the prize from the announcement of the result of the index. Unfortunately, because of the events in West Africa, our major annual event, which should have taken place in Accra in November, had to be postponed. We made a press announcement about that recently. All conferences were actually banned in Accra on recommendation of ECOWAS. So we thought it's only responsible for us to postpone that. And we are in discussion with the Ghanaian government to see when it would be possible to announce that. Our intention was to announce the prize in Accra, and this now will be announced at a later date. We need to have, of course, a joint meeting between the board and the prize committee, and that's expected to take place probably in February this year. So today we're going to focus mainly on the index and our finding for this year. I just want to add that at 2 o'clock this afternoon, our research team would be available on phone lines for any detailed technical discussion on the methodology or the numbers coming out of the index. So we have another opportunity for people who want to go into more details into the technical aspect of the information. It's only appropriate for me to welcome our board members, and I have Natalie De La Palme here, Lord Cairn, Abdullahi Jani, President Masiri, and Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim, Hadil Ibrahim, President Mary Robinson, and Jay Naidu, and Pascal Lamy. I'm very pleased to announce that Pascal Lamy joined our board, and he adds another dimension to a wonderful cluster of people. So welcome to the board, and we give him. I'm also pleased to announce that Graça Machel has also joined our board. Unfortunately, she is not here. She has a pressing event in Mozambique, actually. But she also joined the board out of since yesterday. This is a continuous attempt for us to enhance the board and widen its dimension. It's also enabled me really to, after I finish my speech, to direct the questions to more knowledgeable people than me. So that makes my life easier. So let us start with the slide to see what we have here. That's the usual structure. I think you are familiar with it. Essentially, we have the indicators. We have the 4 categories, under them 14 subcategories, and 93 indicators below that. That's the general structure. Next one, please. Can I change the slides here, or somebody is going to change it for me? Okay, next one, please. Right. This is a nice graphic presentation, which shows us some interesting things. We have 52 countries. Once again, we are unable to produce data for Sudan because it takes 3 years in order to disentangle the data. It's too sad. Sudan is my own country, which is just a split in Africa, going against history. But fair enough. What can you do with Mr. Bashir? And so we have only 52 countries, unfortunately, but we hope next year to start to publish data on Sudan as well. The 2 Sudans, North and South, will have hopefully 44 countries. What's important, we have 14 years of data. So really, this is a very important reservoir of credible data for all academics, researchers, practitioners, development people to really work on. We invite people, we need We need some brains working here to look at all this data and to see the relationship between development, rule of law, violence, health, etc., education, because that will give us really a guide on how to move things and for policy making. So here is the data available. We have a portal now, introduce a portal in our website, which enable you to download anything. It makes it so easy to develop, to download any data you want in any way you want to look at any country or any region or any category. So please use it. Can I have the next one, please? Next one. Right. What we have done here in this presentation is that we thought we look backwards, but we divided the last 10 years into 2 segments of 5 years each. So we're looking at the data between 09 to 013, and is it what, between 05 to 09 and 09 to 013. To see exactly what's happened in these 2 segments of year. It's much easier to look at a group of years instead of just 1 year, because the variation can be too small. We're trying to see if there's any trends. And we're comparing what happened in the last 5 years with the previous 5 years to try to see if we can read anything about where Africa is going or what's going on. So the first thing we can see here is that governance overall, in general, and we need to understand we're looking at 52 countries. So this is a very general kind of view, because the 52 countries are quite different from each other. You all know that. But so please keep that in mind. We notice that governance continue to improve, which is a good news. Although the improvement is a little bit less than the first 5 years. So it's good news, but we should do better. Next one, please. Now, let us look at the bottom of the table. And some very interesting news here. Actually, the greatest improvement in governance is happening really on some very low-ranking countries, which is interesting. These are the best performance in the sense of movement. Those guys are very low in the absolute ranking, but they're showing great improvement. Côte d'Ivoire is improving hugely, followed by Guinea, followed by Niger, and followed by Zimbabwe. It's very interesting to see these countries really registering the best improvement. I say again, this is improvement from a low base. So we need to understand that. The next one. What is interesting about this improvement is that it comes after a period of negative trends. These countries were going down, and then somehow they started to move up. I think we know why somehow, end of conflicts or resolving certain conflicts. But it is encouraging to reverse the direction here. Can I have the next one, please? Now, here we look at the top performers. Those 5 countries have been top of our tables for the last 10 years, since we started. They are always occupied the 5 top places. And they are always improving in general, which is very interesting. But we wanted to look a little bit in more details, and we find that although those 5 well-performing countries have continued to do well, they started to show some weakness in some categories. So Mauritius, which is the top country, always been number one, show a little bit of the deterioration in the area of safety and security and rule of law. Of course, it shows, again, improvement in a lot of other, the three other categories. Cape Verde show a decrease in human development. Botswana show a decrease on sustainable economic opportunity. South Africa shows decline in two categories, actually: security, rule of law, and the participation and human rights, while Seychelles show deterioration in the area of security and rule of law. So what we say is that even among our best countries, the top 5 performers, while they continue to improve in general, there slip ups in some categories, and we say, brothers, watch it. You know, it doesn't mean you are very good, you are perfect. You still have to really watch some slippages happening there. You need to arrest that trend. Can I have the next one, please? Right, in the previous slide, we said that we continue to see improvement of governance, but the interesting thing coming out here is that the driver of governance improvement have changed. If you look at this diagram, we can see overall governance continue to improve. Safety and rule of law continue to deteriorate. Participation in human rights improving, and now is improving quite a lot, actually, in the last 5 years. Sustainable economic opportunity is stagnating. That's interesting. Human development continue to develop in the same strong pace. So what is the difference between the last 5 years and the previous 5 years before that? We can see clearly from these diagrams that while sustainable economic opportunity was a driver for growth and improvement of overall governance between 2005 and 2009, in the last 5 years, the driver for the improvement of governance actually comes from participation and human rights. I think that's interesting. When we hear all the fuss about Africa rising stories and economic opportunity, etc., and we look at the data, and we see something slightly different here. Of course, we have to appreciate this is the average of 52 countries. So different countries may have different drivers. We need to go at a country level to analyze each country, which of course I cannot do here, but the data is available. Here, we are getting the overall picture of what's happening across the continent. So that's an interesting something here to look at. The next one, please. We just continue to compare now in the different categories. We can see here the continuous deterioration on safety and rule of law. We try to look, next one please, we try to look at the reasons, what is happening, what are the indicators below that category, what's happening within. What we see is that here we have national security, we have safety, rule of law, we have rule of law, we have personal safety, we have accountability, and we see what is deteriorating here and what's improving. And we notice that interesting story here, that national security is improving. The only area in safety and rule of law is improving is that of national security. By national security, we mean cross-border violence. This is coming to an end. There is no cross-border violence in Africa now. For some years, Some time ago, it was a big problem. But something different happened. We can see more violence within countries now. And that bringing the whole score also down, bringing security of people and safety of people down. Just look at all the conferences we have in Africa. I mean, I don't need to tell you. The violence inside Libya, the violence in Nigeria, the violence in Mali, the violence in South Sudan, the violence in Somalia, all this is violence taking place, or civil wars taking place within the countries themselves. So we don't see violence across borders or between states, but that also raises some questions for us to think about. Why is that? What exactly is the reason for this increase of violence level within countries in Africa? Is it to do with marginalization of certain group? Is there cracks in the fabric of a society? Are these cracks occurring before inequality? Because of inequality? Is it because of grievances, of discrimination, religious extremism? What is it? That's something which we invite you and our academics to really look into. All what we can do is to bring this data to your attention and ask what exactly is happening here. Why are we really less secure in our countries now? Next one, please. You can see how cross-border tension continues to improve. I mean, that's... next one. You can see a great momentum here for participation and human rights. This area is improving and continue to improve in Africa, and we hope this can be a driver for improvement in other categories as we move forward. Next one, please. We look at the sub-categories and indicators. We see what areas in participation and human rights is improving, and we think participation is improving quite a lot. Gender is improving. Actually, gender has been improving in Africa almost every year consistently for the last 14 years since we started to collect the data. Is the most improved category or subcategory in Africa. That is wonderful because African women deserve better and things are improving. But people need to understand, we're talking about improvement. Absolute level is still low. So we have still a lot of work to do to really improve the situation of the issue of gender in Africa. So we need to continue to push that, and we need to continue to this sort of column rising up in the next year. So please keep pushing in that area. Next one, please. This is very encouraging. Actually, all the participation subcategories have shown improvement in the last 5 years. That's great. So this is wonderful news for us. Next one, please. This is not a wonderful news. Sustainable economic opportunity is really stagnating. It's slightly deteriorating, but it's very little. So it's effectively stagnating. What that means, yes, we maintained the progress we made before, but we did not make further progress. So in the 05 to 09 was a great progress, but we stopped there. We are not continuing that progress. And that's an issue for us to look into, especially everybody talking about the economic miracle in Africa. We need to watch out here. If we go to the next one, we see what elements within that category and what's happening there. Public management, is down, business environment is down, infrastructure is improving, but not fast enough. Rural sector is stagnating, not much improvement taking place in the rural sector. People can go, of course, below that to see even at a lower level indicators what's happening, which area. We don't have a room here to go into more details. Now, finally, the last category, human development, that remains one of the great stories of Africa, that our human development side continue to improve strongly. Improved in the previous 5 years, in the last 5 years, and this is a wonderful story. We'll go to the next one. This is a summary looking at the various subcategories to see what really improved and what deteriorated. There are 14 of these subcategories. We can see health, greatest improvement, participation, wonderful, gender is doing well, education doing well, infrastructure is okay, not as good as what happened before. We expect it to be more than that, we hope so. Rights, welfare, etc. But we see we have a deterioration in accountability, business environment, rule of law, personal safety. So the picture is mixed. We have a lot of improvement in many areas. We have some decline in certain areas. The good news maybe is that the declining columns here are much smaller. The 1% or an average or something like that, while the improvement really are quite significant. So we hope that thing will be arrested, and I wish to come next year with hopefully everything to the right-hand side. It's not easy, but we should try. Right. In this slide, we're looking at 5 countries which improved most, and 5 countries which declined most, just to see what's going on there. So we see Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Sao Tome, Principe, and Liberia improvement, Tunisia, Cape Verde, Madagascar, Eritrea, and Libya are declining. And one thing is important here, this is not an absolute measure, that's a relative measure. So while Cape Verde is declining here, it remains one of our top performers. So let us not mix it. When we see Zimbabwe is improving here, Zimbabwe, I think, is what? Is number 42. What number is Zimbabwe? In the absolute ranking? 46. So Zimbabwe is coming number 46 out of 52. So you really need to treat these numbers carefully. Don't jump to conclusion without comparing all the numbers, absolute numbers and relative improvement or decline. So that is like what it looks like in terms of movement. Finally, just a brief picture of the various resources we are putting at your disposal here. We have the complete data book, which is full information in print of all the data we have. The next one is a summary overview of the data. Then we have another publication, which is country profiles, country by country. If you're interested in a country, you just want to get that data on country, you can get it through there. And then you have the key finding. Besides this, of course, you can download the actual data through our portal or other things. And also you are welcome to contact our research team if you want to get into more detailed information. With this, I'll stop here to allow for you to ask some questions, and thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim. I'm now going to take questions. I'll be with you just now, Martin. I'm going to take 3 questions at a time from the floor and from our live web streaming. So I'm going to move between the two. I'm going to ask for the questions to be short and concise. Just a disclaimer, 1 question at a time. So if there are 2 questions, I assume it's at my discretion to pick one of the 2 that you ask. But I ask that you do please stick to 1 question. Martin.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations on producing it and not having it with the prize. Gives us a better chance to focus on the index. Excellent idea. One thing I think we can't allow to go past, and then a question, if I may. I just think that the health index, which is so impressive, I would very much like to hear somebody say how they think Ebola will impact on that. But I would also like to hear what Jay Naidu has to say about the decline in rights in South Africa.
I'll take a second question from the floor, and then I'm going to switch the third one from here. I'm sorry, I had a lady in front, and then I'll do the second one.
Right, I'm quite curious to hear from the panel if there's any sort of sub-regional trends that we can see in terms of kind of the different sub-regional groupings in Africa.
And the last one from the floor with Richard over there.
Richard Dowden from the Royal African Society. Yes, thank you, Mo. This is one of the joys of the African year. It's been weeks of studying as well. I just wanted to be clear about the participation accountability thing, because I would have thought that more participation would result in more accountability, but participation is up, accountability is down. And particularly in the year when Nigeria became Africa's biggest economy, the figures are pretty dismal, actually, except for participation. Now, is this Nigerians being given these participatory things by the government, or is it Nigerians saying, we've had enough of this, we're going to get involved?
Thanks.
Good question.
So we can take the first response on the health question.
Right, let me try to spread it between our things. Ebola, the first question. Hadil, can you come into this one?
Sure. Thank you. Clearly, we can't look at these health indicators without relating them to Ebola, so thank you for that question. I think if you look here, the indicators that we use for that subcategory focus on interventions, health interventions, as much as they do on health systems. So I think we've had a lot of success with vaccinations, for example, but clearly, as a governance organization, we would emphasize the need to build institutions and systems. And I think that's the challenge with Ebola. I'd just like to take this opportunity to highlight the fact that the UN Special Envoy, David Nabarro, has actually sort of highlighted the leadership of the presidents in the 3 most affected countries, but also in Senegal and Nigeria for containing the virus, and has really pointed at the excellent leadership of the individuals. The reality is, particularly as the 3 most affected countries are fragile states, post-conflict states, the systems are really not in a place to deal with it. And it speaks to another comment that you made, Martin, which is this separation today of the prize from the index, because I think for a long time, people have conflated governance and leadership, and these are 2 very different things. Governance, as we define it in the foundation, is really about risk management, and leadership is about taking risks. And I think today, and with the Ebola virus, we really need to look at risk management, how we take our resources, limited as they are in many cases, and transfer them into the best outcomes for our people. And in the case of Ebola, governance is really looking at the systems we've been able to build, or more broadly, the institutions that we've been able to build. So I personally am very happy that the foundation is making this distinction between leadership and governance more apparent. And today we're talking about the governance dimension, and Ebola is, of course, a reflection of the need to build systems and institutions across the continent.
Can I just add 1 or 2 things concerning Ebola? I know it is not really the main subject, but who cannot not comment on what's going there, is the importance of building capacity, system delivery, health system deliveries. That's important. It's not coincidence that the 3 countries which most affected are all really fragile countries coming out of conflicts with severely limited ability to deliver health, an efficient health system. I mean, one of these countries has only, I think, less than, what's the number was mentioned to us in New York, 20 doctors or something, maybe? It's incredible how weak are the systems. But it's interesting to see the countries which has more resilient systems like Senegal or like Nigeria. They managed to contain it. So it is not, it is possible to deal with this if you have the capacity. But also we need to be rational. What worries me is this stigmatization, you know, the way we brushing all Africa with this brush of Ebola. I heard people canceling, I mean, the tourist board in South Africa concerned because so many people canceling holidays in South Africa. Now, Paris is closer to Guinea than South Africa. Anybody canceled flight to Paris because of Ebola? You guys, don't be crazy, come on. Look at the map and understand what's going on. Because to really brush all of Africa, these people say, oh, I don't go to Nairobi, I don't. This is 3,000 kilometers away. You know, England is closer to that. You know, you are all here in London, you are not suffering Ebola. So we need to be really rational. Quarantining all of Africa or putting all of countries under quarantine because of Ebola is really a serious matter. And we are very worried now about the economic prospect of these 3 countries. When the borders are closed, when, I mean, we can have a bigger catastrophe actually than Ebola in terms of hunger and famine if we are not careful. So we need to follow the direction of the WHO, what is needed to contain this disease, and that's it. And then be rational in dealing with that. And remember, every day more people die of malaria than Ebola. Just put it in context to understand what is going on here. Sorry for my, I think Jay Naidu was supposed to respond to a question about South Africa.
Thanks, Martin. I expected that to come from you. I think the wonderful thing about the Mo Ibrahim Governance Index is that it disaggregates the data so that we're able to drill down into the underlying details and expose some of the contradictions. You know, if you're familiar with many of the other indexes, one of the things that many indexes in the past have measured, for example, the success of North Africa, and then missed the Arab Spring, because they usually ended up at the top of the index. I think this allows us to get more to the more granular detail. I think what it shows about South Africa is similar to what the top 5 countries are indicating as well, that governance has improved, but there are worrying signs, and that we need to be vigilant and never get complacent about it, because governance is not an event, it's a continual process. I think also what it shows about South Africa is that the formal architecture of governance, which is constitutions, a judiciary, a legislative system, regular elections that are free and fair, are important but insufficient in order to meet the measurement that we have of the delivery of public goods, that a state has a legal obligation to deliver and citizens have an absolute and fundamental human right to demand. And so, yes, I think that in what it's showing us in the South African context is that issues of exclusion, of marginalization, remain really important. Part of our challenge in South Africa has been creating pathways of hope and opportunity for young people coming onto the labor market, many of whom are finding that they are coming out of 12 years of education with very few skills, no jobs, and unlikely to have the dignity of labor in their lifetimes. And I think this is not just unique to South Africa, it's not just unique to Africa. It is a trend that is, I think, challenging the entire global economy, including in Europe itself. So I think issues of personal safety have always remained an issue for us in South Africa. And again, it relates to the issue of inequality. Inequality has risen in South Africa. And I think that's a very important indicator for us to say these are worrying signs. And we need to be very careful about addressing those expectations of the citizens, whether that's in terms of labor rights or better incomes or better wages or whether it's social welfare. So I think this is what the index is allowing us to do, is to say that it remains stable, politically stable, but there are worrying signs that you have to address to avoid future problems.
Thank you, Jay. Perhaps, Abdullah, could I ask you to please take the question on regional, the second question that came through, the sub-regional trends. Oh, Natalie?
Natalie will take that.
I think you're right. Okay. Just maybe some very general trends, and I can get you to the data portal where you are able to see both the regional trends by regional groupings and by regional economic communities. But basically what we can see very quickly is that in all categories, in all 4 categories, Central Africa is coming lowest. And in 3 categories, which are safety and rule of law, participation and human rights, sustainable economic opportunities, Southern Africa is coming highest. North Africa is the country that is still ranking highest in human development. And then there are 2 maybe interesting insights at subcategory level, which is West Africa, which is ranking highest in rights, and North Africa, which is ranking lowest in gender. But maybe you can, and we are happy to give you some more details if needed. Thank you.
And then there's a question from Richard on accountability. Lord Ken, could I ask you to take the question? Richard, would you like to? Could I ask you to please repeat the question?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's put simply, is it surely more participation means more accountability, but accountability was down, participation was up. Can you explain that? And also the Nigeria question, that participation, was it given by the government, or are people rising up and taking part more than they used to?
I'm not sure that I have a great deal that I can add to the numbers that we have. I mean, clearly the signs are that more people are participating in the political process. More people are attending elections. More people are dealing with governments. But the accountability of the results of governments in all sorts of areas doesn't seem to be following through in terms of the transparency of the replies and the effectiveness that has on, for instance, some of the ways in which government enterprises are properly made accountable through the processes that one would hope that in due course the participation would result in. We haven't got there all the way. The structures still need to be worked on to make those happen better than they do at present.
I'm going to take a question that came from our live stream from Sami in Tunisia. He asks, how is the foundation dealing with the lack of reliable data in Africa? Natalie? Should I ask you to come in?
Well, we are trying to deal with that. We are working a lot on getting more data in, for example, 3 areas that seem very important for us, which are poverty, definition and the level of poverty, the inequalities issue, and the employment issue. We are doing that through, of course, a lot of advocacy and also a lot of meeting and working together with other institutions, academicians, to make sure that this availability of data, which for us is very important, it's important for us, but I would say it's probably even more important for governments themselves, because without data, there can't be any sound public policy. You need to look at results to make sure that you are doing right, and without data, you can't look at results. So this, for us, is really a crucial issue. We are also working with two organizations which are partnering with two organizations which are Africa Integrity and Afrobarometer, to make sure that we also do our more than 30 sources add data that come from the ground and come from African surveys.
I just wish to add here that, yes, while we are funding research projects inside Africa to collect more data, as she said, we are also campaigning for really strengthening of the African statistical offices. The point is that you cannot drive a car without instruments. You cannot fly a plane without information. How could you run a country without data, without information? It is so important. Unfortunately, many governments just don't share that view. Many donors and development agencies don't think that is sexy enough, because they think, well, if they do a clinic and save 10 babies, that will make good breasts back at home. But when actually you have accurate data, you can deliver policies which can save thousands of babies and save a lot of money and manage your resources in a more optimum way. So we're really campaigning for that. And we are starting to get really some positive responses. The post-MDG debate going on now is a great opportunity, because we challenge our friends developing these post-MDG targets. We say, how do you set targets if you cannot measure? You say, I'm going to have poverty. If you don't, unable to measure poverty now, or poverty 15 years later, how do you measure outcome? How do you know you succeed or not? It's ridiculous if you set targets and you have no way to measure. So, and it's good that the eminent persons committee in their report to the Secretary General on the post-MDG emphasize the need for measurements. So this argument will keep pushing, and we're also grateful for Pascal Lamy in his famous report. He chaired the commission at Oxford University, which worked for 2 years, and I think the report was published earlier this year about now for the long term. And in that report, they also promoted the concept of wallet stats. I don't know if Pascal, you want to say something about wallet stats proposal?
Thanks, Mo. Just a short word. Among the suggestions which were done by this Oxford Martin Commission, which, as you said, I had the privilege to chair, and which made a number of recommendations in order to address more efficiently challenges for generations to come. Some have gotten market traction across the planet. I mean, this report was downloaded 1.1 million times. That's the number last week. And among the suggestions, one which was to have a sort of world stat, which would be a global watchdog, so that statistical information would be first available somewhere in the cloud. Second, better quality. Third, with a sort of independent, non-state-driven global organization is getting some traction here in Great Britain. Atkinson, who's a very solid, prominent world expert on statistics, is driving this with the Oxford Martin people. More to come. We know that the UNECA has recently invested quite a lot of resources in order to improve the availability of proper metrics and numbers for Africa. As you said, Mo, that's a big issue, because if you look at the world of statistics from the moon, Africa is still the place where there is the least of this fabric of metrics, and we have to be better. And I think what you and we are doing with this index is also pushing in this direction.
Thank you.
I suggest, if you haven't seen that report, to download it from the Oxford University website. It has been downloaded over 1 million times. It's a report of the Commission on Future Generation, which are addressing a very important issue, which is today, unfortunately, nobody is taking a long-term view. All our politicians are just kicking the can. Important decisions needed on long-term issues are completely pushed aside. This fast cycle of elections mean people just focus on the next day and the headlines on the tabloid next morning. That is very damaging and very costly. It's a very interesting thing. I suggest you read it. It's free of charge, and you'll have really interesting views to see there. Thanks.
Thanks, ma'am. I'm going to take 2 more questions from the floor. Barnaby first, and then I'll take from there. Mike over there, please. There's one. The first question's from the back there, please. Barnaby.
Thank you very much. Barnaby Phillips from Al Jazeera English Television. I'm afraid it's the same observation I made last year, but I'm just curious to see what you think about it, which is that there's a tendency to treat each country as an individual unit of equal worth. So, for example, when you look at the top 5 performers, I only see one country, South Africa, which has a substantial population. And whilst this doesn't mean that your analysis of all the countries is not excellent, or your comparison over time is not very, very valid, surely your regional and pan-continental trends are potentially misleading, because you don't show the per capita experience of ordinary Africans, tens of millions of Nigerians, Ethiopians, people from the DRC, for instance.
Thank you, Barnaby. From the front here.
Thank you. My name is Lizzie Donnelly. I'm the Assistant Head of the Africa Programme at Chatham House. This is a question linking into the last comments and really about one of use and impact of data. 14 years into this, is the data being leveraged in the way that you had hoped and expected, particularly by African civil society and African parliaments, for example? Are there any other ways in which you'd really like to see this data having impact? Thank you.
Abdullah, Dr. Janneh, you'll take the first question? No, the second question. Well, you're going to take the first?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Yes, you have an interesting point to make, that countries vary in their sizes and their population, but we're also constrained by the fact they are independent countries, and they have different governments, and they have different process. So if we are evaluating governance, we have to evaluate governance as per country. So that's our one constraint we have. We try to overcome that. If you notice in some of our, for example, last year I stood here and said 94% of Africans live under better governance than 10 years. So we try to produce numbers which also tells people. Yesterday in our board meeting, I recall the discussion, I'm not sure, was it Pascal who raised this issue? Yes, in the meeting yesterday. He asked us to, why don't we look at the weigh the data by population, and we see how it looks like. And so we decided we'll try to do that and produce a separate report where we look at the way of population and how it affects this data. So it's always useful to hear views from the media and also to have fresh people in the board because we always have fresh ideas. Thank you.
With that, I'm going to ask Pascal to just step in a bit on the...
Just to confirm what Mo said, I think you're right that these numbers are very good numbers country per country. They are solid and they give a precise view of the set of indicators country per country. Now, moving to subcontinental or even continental conclusion, because of the problem you just mentioned, which is that there is no population weighting, for instance, in constructing a global indicator, which, by the way, we don't do. We don't construct a global indicator. We just look at trends as they appear on the basis of averages per country. You're right. That's an issue. And as Mo said, we discussed that yesterday. And we agreed that we would test some weightings in order to check whether or not different weightings can lead to different conclusions than the average we are taking, which, by the way, is not granted. Global conclusions may be misleading, but we don't know. And we will have just to do the numbers and test, but I think it's a very valid question as far as regional or continental conclusions can be drawn from these numbers.
Thank you. And Abdullah, if I can ask you to please take the question from Liz on the impact of data, and is the data being leveraged?
Data is being data is being used. There is increasing interest in the index, and really, and I think at every level in Africa, at continental institutions like the African Union, at the sub-regional level, ECOWAS, but importantly also at the country level. And we are accompanying this interest by really organizing meetings, seminars around the index. If you go to the African country, I think we've organized something like 5, and over the next year we'll do another 10, where we go to the country and organize national seminars around the index. And it's not only for government, it's government and government officials, policymakers, civil society, private sector, and the interest is tremendous. In Sierra Leone, just before Ebola, we organized a seminar in which the president himself came. The president himself came and opened. I am going before, you talked about parliaments, I am going before the Pan-African Parliament on the 22nd of October to do what Mo did, because they wanted to really be informed as an institution. So the interest is colossal, and I said we are accompanying this, and we'll continue to do so. I have an office based in Dakar. I prefer to be in Dakar or London, it doesn't mean, but I'm in Dakar. And all I do is go around the continent and meet as many heads of state and other leaders to discuss this and see how best it can impact on policy. And of course, this we do as a team. I just happen to be in Dakar, but the research team, the policy and research department is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. This next question is for you, Dr. Salim, from Mohammed in Tanzania. What does Dr. Salim think about Tanzania's results?
Well, I'm not sure it's a fair question, because we are a number of members of the board here, and to particularize a particular individual to a particular country is not very healthy. However, let me say this. Certainly, I'm not too excited about the results. Tanzania could do better. It has done better. Historically, there was a time when, I think 2 years ago, when it was one of the top 10 performers. Now we have gone down a bit. On the whole, there have been areas of improvement, but there have also been areas of consistent deterioration. And I think the value of this index is that it alerts the leadership and it also alerts the people on where we have gone wrong, what can be done to rectify the situation, and it has to be. For example, we are doing extremely well on the question of human development. I mean, Tanzania is doing very well in human development. But it has done what nobody can deny the fact, for example, on the issue of safety and security. There's good security. I mean, there's no problem as far as national security is concerned, but there is a problem as far as personal security is concerned. So anyone familiar with Tanzania, anyone who's following events in the country would know that this is one area which requires a further, a more serious and in-depth tackling in order to overcome that.
Thank you. I'm going to take another question from our live stream.
Can I, if you do allow me, I just forgot, and I do apologize. I was maybe too excited. I really forgot to acknowledge some eminent friends here today. I want to acknowledge President Ahtisaari, Martti Ahtisaari, the past president of Finland and the Nobel Prize winner and the Prize Committee member, and Namibian citizen too. So thanks for joining us. I also acknowledge President Chisano, who is our laureate, first laureate actually, and President Mohai from Botswana, who was second laureate, and Madam Asha, former Minister of Education in Guinea, and member of the Prize Committee actually. So I'm sorry I have forgot to acknowledge you. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So with that, thank you, Mo. With that, I'm actually going to invite the next question is going to be shared between President Mohai and President Mary. And the question is from Irungu Houghton from Nairobi in Kenya, and he asks, if you were presenting the IIAG to the African Heads of State Summit in January 2015, what 3 actions would you want them to prioritize and why? So perhaps I ask President Mohai from the floor to join us first, and then Mary, please.
Well, the answer would be given, but what the data says, and where there is the deterioration in a category or subcategory, I will then ask them to improve in that particular category. So I think that's simple.
Well, I think it would be very interesting to be able to take up with African heads of state the fact that safety and rule of law has been deteriorating in most countries. You know, that's a really serious thing because, interestingly, the new Sustainable Development Goals, the draft of the working group, contains a goal on rule of law. And I heard in New York that there was some effort to dilute that rule of law goal. It should be the opposite. Clearly, what is needed is strong commitment to rule of law. So that would be one message. Even though there has been an overall improvement in participation and rights, I noticed that, for example, South Africa has not improved in participation and human rights in the last 5 years, has not improved in participation by minus 0.8, in rights minus 3.6, and in gender minus 2.0. So it's really very important that gender, this is the year of commitment to African women, and a decade of African women as well. So I think that's very important, but also human rights. But in particular, I think that rule of law point would be one that it would be very good to be able to bring out.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Her Excellency Mr. Sabat Ali from Sudan. A mic here, please, in front.
Merci. Je voulais juste faire une...
Thank you. I wanted to clarify something. I'm the ambassador of Senegal here in London. You were talking about the Ebola virus.
Don't worry, we'll switch.
It's okay.
You can press too.
Just, yes, just pour une
Just a clarification. You were talking about Senegal as one of the 5 countries concerned, affected by the Ebola virus. I wanted to clarify things. For Senegal, there has been one single case which was imported, and the person recovered, as was the case here in the UK. But unfortunately, we are on the list of affected countries. I repeat, we had one single case, and the patient has recovered. So there is no single case of Ebola virus remaining in Senegal. I just want to clarify things.
All congratulated Senegal, and we said that in countries which have resilient health delivery system, they were able really to deal with this situation, and Senegal have done that. So this is a fact, and I hope just people know these facts without, not only say, actually we're asking for really not to quarantine the other 3 countries which has the problem, because that complicates the issue. And we ask Senegal itself also to help that process, because at some stage you close the airports, and that was, flies to some other countries, and that was not very smart. I hope you reopen now.
But we have a human corridor
to help
the other countries.
Okay. But are you allowing flights now?
Yes.
Good. That's a good development.
Let me add on to what the ambassador said, because I live in Dakar. I think Senegal's case is really a best practice. I mean, the amount of public awareness that's been promoted, the commitment of the Minister of Health, of the President himself, and so on, is just remarkable. And I was saying, maybe they can share this with the rest of Africa. And I know on the corridor thing, the 3,000 soldiers that are being promised for Liberia, you have agreed that you will provide a corridor. So really, we salute you, and you are not part of the contest, but you had one, which you dealt with, I said, completely. Yes,
I'm going to take another question from our live stream, and I'm going to ask a man of wisdom, President Masiro, to please answer this one. And the question is from at Involve Youth, so it's a youth organization. In what ways can youth in Africa participate in governance?
I think by giving them the opportunity to participate, by organizing seminars to involve them in what goes on in their countries, and not only in their countries, but also that now we live in a global village. What happens in one country affects what happens in other countries. And therefore, they should, and they should all, above all, also know where they come from, because very often you find that people go astray because they don't know where they come from. They have got, they don't have a value system which guides them as to what to do in future to improve on the welfare, improve on what had gone before them.
Sorry, President Mahai, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I wanted to supplement to say that young people should they should not just be involved. They should involve themselves too. What they should do in countries like, in many of our countries where now elections are taking place most frequently, they should register and vote. When that happens, when politicians know that the youth are voting, and when the youth have made their wishes known, then they will be responsive to the youth once we know that there is a youth vote. What happens that normally the youth would protest in the streets and at university and go back feeling that, well, we told them. But that's not enough. What they should do is to become voters, because the voting age in our countries has now been reduced to 18. That's what they should do. And that's how to involve them.
Thank you very much. There's a lucky number last question from the floor, and then I'm going to take the last question from there. There you go, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Yvonne Apia. I'm the head of Africa Political at the Commonwealth Secretariat and a Mo Ibrahim Fellow. My question is actually more of a comment. When I look at the top 10, almost every year, it appears they come from Commonwealth Africa. I think what it says to the organization itself is that, you know, we need to not be complacent that we've got 7 good countries that are shining examples of good governance, but rather to look at the detail and see where we can actually be of further help to these organizations, to these countries. I say that because when I look at the top 10, I see a country like Lesotho, and we're aware of the recent issues and the breakdown in governance, a real crisis in that country, yet we can see that it's doing very well in the top 10. And I think what then behoves us is to look at where the failings would have been over the past 14 years, looking at the data. And I think in that respect, the IIAG proves itself to be also an excellent sort of conflict prevention, crisis prevention, early warning system tool. And that's my comment to say how valuable that is in my line of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm taking the last question, and it's going to come from our live stream. And Mo, this one's for you. And it's from Henrik from the Nordic Africa Institute. The question is, considering the data on economic growth, can we draw from the conclusion that the narrative of Africa rising is a misrepresentation?
Many years ago, people said Africa is a basket case. We stood up and said, no, Africa is not a basket case. Africa having some problems, but there's also opportunity and there is hope. Nowadays, people say Africa is the best thing after the sliced bread. And that if you want to make money, that is the new Wild West, to just go there, you know, it's a gold rush to Africa to make money. We say this is also misrepresentation. The fact is, Africa has always been a good place for business. Africa is moving forward. Africa is rising, has always been rising, but rising slowly. I think that is what I believe. Things are improving, but it's not like everything is perfect. It is not. We have issues, we have problems, we have to deal with. So please let us be balanced in the view. We do things, we don't move from one extreme to another extreme. So we're moving forward, but slowly. Can we move faster, please?
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Ibrahim, the board of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, all of you for joining us this morning, and those who joined us through the live stream. Please note, this is not the last that this relationship exists. Do visit us on our website, moibrahimfoundation.org. Interact with us on Twitter, #IIAG. We're there on the whole year. Find us on Facebook. Download all our materials under the IIG download section, and soon we'll be available on your phone via the IIG app. So we're there. Do call us at the office. You've got all of the contact details on our website, and the research team is always available to take more questions. Thank you very much for joining us.
Can you please say thank you to the research team, the really unknown soldiers who produce all this amazing data, and we're sitting here taking credit for it. Actually, we did not do it. Those are the guys who did it, so thank you for the...
Great.